At precisely 3:10 a.m. on 21st September 2025, a Ukrainian Bayar TB2 surveillance drone had fixated on a distinct, deep origin signature well inside hostile lines. A twin-heat imprint emerged, crisp and unmistakable. The automated targeting array flagged it without hesitation. Two Russian Mi-8 AMT helicopters, each worth about $16 million, had just rolled to a stop at an airfield on the Crimean Peninsula. Down in the subterranean UAV ops room at Zaporizhzhia, the sensor team fell almost completely quiet. Tension rose. Opportunity presented itself. A single accurate strike would not merely remove two helicopters, it could paralyze the whole local resupply network. Both Mi-8s had finished a near 2-hour sortie, transporting over 60 soldiers and their equipment away from the front. Once they landed, the helicopters were driven straight into the maintenance pad for routine servicing and refueling. On the ramp, the atmosphere was casual. Crews shrugged out of flight suits and gloves, joked loudly, shared a few plastic cups of vodka, and celebrated a flawless sortie. They had no idea their routine flight had become the breadcrumb that would reveal the base's precise location. Like baiting an ant with a sugar cube, Ukraine needed a single lure to draw the insect back, then destroy the nest. At 3:20 a.m., mere minutes after the pair of Mi-8s touched down, displays at the Gore Command Center in Zaporizhzhia began to strobe. Commercial infrared satellite passes had recorded the hot signatures on the ramp, where engines still glowed. A Bayar TB2 that had been patrolling the corridor was immediately retasked. It dropped to 1,650 feet, hugged the ground, and slipped into the blind sector beyond the coverage of Nebo and Podlet K1. Its composite construction made its radar echo resemble a small bird. It was nearly invisible on opposing scopes. Its electro-optical and infrared payload traced the lingering engine heat of the Mi-8s. Video streamed back to UAV command in Zaporizhzhia, confirming the reality on the ground. This was not a casual parking spot. At least two Mi-8s were staged for redeployment. Two B-12 platforms handled maritime scouting. Behind the aircraft, a cluster of Nebo-U arrays stood ready, able to detect low observable aircraft and track hundreds of contacts concurrently. Human sources reported hundreds of tons of fuel and ammunition in the hangars and yards, sufficient to sustain ongoing air operations, extend pressure on Ukraine's defenses, and keep supply lines functioning. If the complex were neutralized, the adversary would lose a critical node. A strategic blind spot would open. Early warning capabilities would be degraded. The logistics chain would splinter. Air defense effectiveness would degrade, and corridors would open for subsequent Ukrainian strikes. The Ghost Special Task Unit acted instantly. They escalated from observation to a 3-tiered strike plan. A UAV group that had been covertly staged for nearly 2 hours received orders to alter course and enter the terminal corridor. By 3:25 a.m., the group sat under 25 miles from the objective. Leading the approach were two UJ-22 airborne decoy drones flying at 985 feet with a cruise pace near 100 miles per hour. Unarmed, their only purpose was to broadcast strong emissions and jam the 2.4 and 5.8 GHz bands. With carbon fiber skins and oversized airframes, they did not evade enemy radar. They were built to be the first to draw fire. Exactly 656 feet astern of them, 3 Lyutan 196 strike UAVs followed as the main attack. They ran lower at roughly 490 feet, holding cruise speeds between 112 and 124 miles per hour. Each carried a 165-pound shaped charge warhead. The formation held an arrow shape. They emitted no emissions. All guidance relied on an internal navigation suite, entirely GPS independent. The target was the military airbase in Crimea. Coordinates had been validated less than 5 minutes earlier. From launch, the formation generated no open-band control traffic. Every maneuver matched the rehearsal to the second. All command timers sync. At 3:27 a.m., the pair of UJ-22 decoys slipped into the initial air defense recognition band. A Podlet K-1 site, positioned over 12.5 miles from the strip, began to log anomalous echoes in the mid-altitude envelope. Alert lights began to pulse. Radar technicians ramped up scan rates. The Nebo-U shifted into active status. High-frequency lobes started sweeping wider arcs. The UJ-22 radar traces sharpened. On the Podlet K-1 operator screen, 2 unidentified blips recurred at between 900 and 1,000 feet altitude, roughly 11.5 miles from the airfield, closing rapidly. Unknown transponder code. The station's preliminary call, a loitering reconnaissance kamikaze UAV preparing to attack. The local air defense commander declared Condition 1. The Nebo-U swung hard and entered high-rate scan. A Pantsir S-1 battery on the eastern perimeter of the airfield activated. 257 E-6 rounds were fired. Intercept took 14 seconds. 2 flashes cleaved the sky. Fireballs bloomed. UAV debris fell onto open ground less than 1,650 feet from the perimeter fence. A duty officer in the command cabin reported the scene clear. Both decoys were neutralized. Air defenses relaxed to a temporary lower alert. Podlet reverted to its routine patrol pattern. Nebo-U continued its sweeps, but reduced scan cadence on the southeast axis. None of the crews realized the true phase of the operation had only just begun. At 330 minutes and 42 seconds, as the Nebo-U manicured its beam northwest, the 3 LUT-196 attack units pushed deeper toward the facility. The lead platform executed a shallow 10-degree break from the original heading. The 2 wing elements maintained formation and dropped altitude below 330 feet, hugging the low tree line along the base's southern edge. All 3 threaded into the gap that had opened between radar sweeps, while air defense assets recalibrated after the opening barrage. The maneuver was pre-computed to transit the intersecting nulls created by 2 sweep arcs, a razor-thin window formed by fragmented side lobes. It was marginally wide enough to pass and exit before Russian radars could relock. This is high-end radar evasion craft. It has enabled Ukrainian UAV operations to reach to Moscow, Kazan, and Astrakhan on the Caspian shore. While the Pantsir crews re-zeroed after the initial discharge, the dagger tip had already punctured the outer defensive ring. Distance to the airfield fell below 10 miles. At prevailing cruise speeds, the formation would arrive on target in under 5 minutes. From that moment, every flight control input timed exploitation of beam rotation and the Pantsir S-1's reaction lag after engaging the decoys. 2 minutes later, the trio of UAVs entered the attack corridor together. Range control confirmed. Liuchi units have entered the attack corridor. Locking heading. Crimea base Mi-8 cluster, B-12S. Nebo-U, the feed announced. Infrared imagery on the control consoles made the situation unmistakable. 2 Mi-8s sat parked at the hangar's edge. 2 B-12S rested nearby. The radar cluster had been unmasked. The airfield had not grasped the incoming threat. It was at their feet, ground-hugging and locking 3 lethal nodes. At 333 minutes and 45 seconds, a faint ultra-low return registered on Nebo-U. A thin heat band showed at the screen's edge. The sector coordinator flagged a fast-accelerating low-altitude contact. Alert Level 2 triggered too late. Inside the control center, Ukrainian engineers armed final dive. Automatic terminal profiles locked to pre-designated aim points. All three Liuti surged into terminal runs. Their finishing sprint hit between 145 and 155 miles per hour. Airframes measured 5 feet in length, with a 7-foot wingspan and carbon composite construction to minimize weight and radar cross-section. These UAVs are optimized for surprise impacts, where a single strike can cascade into broad destruction. 30 seconds later, Liuti-1 initiated a pull-up to 600 feet. Target: the Mi-8 cluster on the west ramp, still exposed. Liuti-2 peeled from the formation, banked 15 degrees left, and locked onto the Nebo-U antenna. Thermal 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Boom! The detonation. The clock marked 3:35 minutes and 23 seconds. Liuti-1 descended at a 26-degree angle, slamming directly into the Mi-8 AMH's engine bay during routine servicing. The collision flashed brilliant white before erupting into a fireball more than 330 feet high, illuminating the entire installation in an instant. The shape-charge blast, amplified by the Mi-8's own fuel and munitions, ignited nearby drums. Peak overpressure surged past 50 pounds per square inch. The shockwave rolled into the second Mi-8, parked just 15 feet away. Both airframes were obliterated, sections of fuselage shredded, rotor blades tore loose, and sailed over 230 feet, striking a nearby hangar roof. A refueling truck was flung aside like scrap. Flames spread with violent intensity. Barely 0.8 seconds later, Liuti-3 smashed into the right side B-12. Its airframe split open, hurling fragments into the auxiliary fuel depot. The second B-12 caught fire in the cascading detonation. Flames raced from wings through fuselage into the servicing bays. At 3:35 minutes and 27 seconds, Liuti-2, with surgical accuracy, dove straight into the Nebo-U radar's main antenna. A dry, brutal explosion ripped the night apart. Russia's central eye went dark. The radar collapsed into a burning skeleton of twisted steel. The shockwave reverberated across more than 12.5 miles. Locals swore an earthquake had struck. Windows inside a 1,970-foot radius shattered. The ramp itself turned into an inferno. The once covert airbase became a blazing torch. Infrared satellite sensors captured a thermal plume over 1,320 feet at the Crimean command node. By 3:36 a.m., Russia's UHF net broadcast its last desperate message. Base under attack. Radar destroyed. Aircraft damaged. Requesting immediate support. Then, silence. In under 7 minutes, the Crimean strategic airfield lost every layer of raged upward. Thick black smoke stretched for hundreds of meters. Blast pressure gutted warehouses nearly 1,970 feet distant. Within 2 minutes of impact, no fewer than 7 secondary blasts erupted. Fuel depots burned, munitions bunkers went up, and serial pool fires rolled across the tarmac. A backup command vehicle succumbed to blast overpressure. By 4:15 a.m., satellite infrared imagery registered a thermal hotspot in western Crimea with a glowing area surpassing 350 meters.